Shalom, shalom. This is Kaparia, aka Pops, at a gym at Chicago with another sit down. Before I get started, like always, I want to send all praises, honor, and glory out to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Kakwadash. To the apostles and elders of GMS out of New York, I want to send double honors. The elder bishops out of Connecticut, apostle that's down in Texas, I send out them double honors because they do rule well. For the brethren around the world, push this truth uncut, unfiltered, give you the good, the bad, and the ugly of the scriptures, correctly breaking down the prophecies, and the interaction with the people on the planet, declaring wanted. I send salutations. But hopefully, like to hope this is edifying for the Aquat, the few and the true. That's listening still and sincere to charity, keep doing so. But for the scorn scoff for reprobate 2/3 Israelites and 17 other nations who are in the midst of Jacob's trouble, it's just going to get a whole lot worse. Anyway, let me see. Turn this music down just a little bit. Okay. So anyway, you you hear a lot of brothers from time to time, going from the apostles all the way down, talk about how the prophecies are jumping off the page, and this, that, and the other. Okay? And all you have to do is tune in to, what's going on in the world, whether it be geopolitics or upheaval, uprisings, the weather, uh, the coldness of people toward each other, these things, or whatever the case might be, and you'll see that. Okay, so like I said, I got something that's jumping off the page, but what it is like I said, I'm gonna go get the scripture first, then I'm gonna let it play so you can see how it's jumping off the page. So I'm gonna go over here and get this. Yeah, I'm gonna go get this Jeremiah 51 and do 8 and 9. Jeremiah 51, verse 8 and 9. Okay. We'll put a little color on it here and here so it stands out. And then we're going to go read this. And I'm going to go and show you how it's jumping off the page. Okay, this is Jeremiah 51, 8, 9. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her? Take balm for her. If so, she may be healed. So what is this balm? Okay, this balm is money. Okay, things this nature. Balm is like a soothing agent. Like if you get like a rash or a burn or something like that. If you get a rash or a burn, just in contemporary terms, a balm. Like I said, if you get a rash or you get a burn, you fall off a bike or a motorcycle or whatever, and you peel some of that skin back. What they'll do is they normally wind up putting some kind of antibiotic ointment on it, and then cover it with one of them gauzes or whatever the case might be, and wrap it up to try to heal the skin. Well, like in this case, Babylon has got a lot of financial woes and this, that, the other, and it's creating a situation for them, and that's just moving toward the C hip, the MOTB, and these types of things. So, like I said, so let's go ahead and read a little bit more of this. We will have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go, everyone to his own country. For her judgment reaches unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. Okay, so now, balm. I'm gonna come back to this balm in a different scripture. Okay, from a with a different word. But let's go over here and let this play a little bit. Give me a second. I'm pulling it up now. Here we go. what we see. And now let me run it back to the beginning and let y'all hear it. Here we go. You see, we try to tell you people all the time and whatnot, for you 2/3 and whatnot, just not listening to us. You got to get out of American news and things of this nature. Why? Because the narrative is controlled. You got to get over to overseas, and even though even these overseas are controlled on some level, you still get a chance to get a little bit of the more of the truth, and you can see the prophecies and be able to filter through them, as opposed to what America is trying to tell you, which is basically trying to keep the people lullabied to sleep until the last minute. So let's let this play.
From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. The debt clock is ticking in the United States and spending cuts may be on the horizon. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said the United States could run out of the money to pay for its bills by June the 1st if the Congress does not raise or suspend the debt limit. So how did the United States sink into this quagmire? Again, CGTN's White House correspondent Nathan King has the latest.
Listen to that word he just said, quagmire. Okay, here we go.
Clock is ticking. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said that the U.S. could run out of its ability to pay some of its debts on the $31 trillion it owes both here and around the world by the 1st of June. Now, the Republicans have said they will not aid the government to raise the debt limit until there are serious negotiations about cutting the budget. The problem is, of course, is that the debt has already been paid for. Essentially, that is stuff that's already been agreed to by Congress. The Republicans are essentially saying, well, we want cuts in the future in return for raising the debt on stuff we already owe. There is going to be talks here on Tuesday, May 9th. The congressional leaders, both Republican and Democrat, will join with U.S. President Biden in the first meetings that we have seen since this potential crisis begun. Will there be a breakthrough? Well, in past experiences, any indicator, this usually goes down to the wire. So it's probably the first of many back and forth we are going to see for a week. But just remember, the U.S. has never defaulted on its debt before, and it would wobble the financial system. It would hit the U.S. economy very hard. And of course, a lot of foreign companies and countries own the $31 trillion worth of U.S. debt in treasury bills around the world. So it would affect the U.S. global system in terms of its finances, but also the U.S.'s reputation and the dollar as well. So much is at stake. And many countries are looking at the U.S. again and saying, why are you playing this brinkmanship over domestic politics? Nathan King, CGTN, just outside the White House.
Okay, I'm going to pause right there for a quick second and pull the scripture up. Okay. And the reason I'm going to do that is because of this. Let me go. Like I said, it wasn't one of the scriptures that I literally had in mind, but just listen to it again. I'm going to pull this up. Let me see. I'm going to go to Obadiah first. I'm going to go to Obadiah 1. Just read through it, okay? The original Obadiah, thus says Lord Power, concerning Edom, we have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. Okay, as these countries get a chance to figure out what's going on and what's happening and how they being taken advantage of, they're going to turn on America. So I'm gonna jump down to verse 6. How are the things that Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee, see, they still got a little bit of peace right now and whatnot, because they still want to try to see if they can get their money out of America. But like I said, as they watch this dollar fold up and become nothing but stubble, and then when they're going to be upset and pissed off. So it says, all the men of like, verse 7, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat the bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. Okay, so this is what's going on. And verse 8, shall I not in that day say, shall I even destroy the wise men out of Edom, the understanding out of the mount of Esau? Esau being this so-called white man as the construct that he set himself up to be back in the what was that, the 1600s, 1700s or so, or whatnot. So this is that construct that he has put on himself, because he don't want to be this dude. He don't want to be Esau. He don't want to be Edom. He don't want to be Edom. So, like I said, so these men going to turn on him. So now let's go back here and let this play.
Yeah, just outside the White House.
That was my colleague Nathan Ken in Washington, D.C., just outside the White House. Now, for more discussions, I'm joined today in Beijing by Michael Powers, a Zurich Insurance Group Chair Professor from Tsinghua University. In Shanghai, we have Joseph Gregory Mahoney, Professor of Politics at East China Normal University. And in Los Angeles, we have William Li, Chief Economist at the Milken Institute. Welcome, gentlemen. Let me start with you, William, in Los Angeles. Let's first of all take a look at the outstanding debt over the last half a century for the United States. Now, according to the U.S. Department of the Treasury, U.S. debt rose significantly, 400% in just the last 2 decades, hitting the record high of 31 trillion U.S. dollars at the end of 2022. That kept rising, of course.
Now let's take a look at that date on it. Okay, this is 1972. If you think about that, Abba Bivens showed up in about 66 and started preaching around that time. Okay, so 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72. 6 years after 6 years after he showed up and started bringing out the truth and whatnot, this debt ceiling has started going up behind that. Also, this is the same time that Esau decided he wanted to mount up with wings and be among the stars and place himself as God and be among the heavens and be above the throne of God and all these other kinds of things. All this stuff this isn't coincidental that Abba Bivens and as they say, the truth seekers and Abba Bivens and whatnot and One West and these types of things showed up, especially the One West camp. Okay, this isn't by mistake and whatnot. You had almost 500 years of things, about 500 years or so of this Jesus being preached through the world. And then Abba Bivens brought the truth to the table, and now this thing. And it isn't going to be coincidental that there's another name that I'm going to wind up mentioning in the process of this, but let's let this play through some more.
This year, William, what is at stake? How significant is this?
It's very important because the United States has been running deficits. In other words, the government has been spending more than it's taking in revenues and taxes. And as a consequence, it's had to issue debt in order to finance the deficit. Fortunately, the United States is in a very good position in that the dollar is a reserve currency. So not only are we able to borrow from our own citizens, but we're also able to borrow from the rest of the world. And up until now, the rest of the world have been willingly giving us resources in return for holding
resources. So the world has been given resources. Okay, resources. Remember that word, resources. And we want to remember the word resources, and we want to remember timelines and things that's going on. Okay.
U.S. dollars in the form of U.S. Treasury bills. And the U.S. deficit now has grown from 3% of our gross domestic product to well over 5% because of extra spending that's taken place because of COVID. So we are seeing deficits starting to grow, and we had hoped that with COVID being over, we could cut back on our spending to be closer in line with our revenues. But that hasn't happened, and that's really at the crux of the political battle between the Democrats and the Republicans.
Joseph, what do you think is at stake?
Okay, that's spending. There's that Balm again. That's that salve. That coding agent hoping that they can fix things. They want to be able to cut back on the spending because they've been shelling out a lot of money and whatnot. But we told you all this years ago when Russia, when Brazil, Russia, China, and let me think. What's that other one? Um, um, Iran, when they set up the BRICS and whatnot, what was going on. And when they started cutting them deals and saying that they was going to cut it with their own money and they didn't have to go get the American dollar anymore, basically that started pulling the foot. That started pulling the rug from under the foot of America's stronghold as being the world currency per se. Okay, so let's let it play.
How bad will this look like for the United States, physically, financially, for its citizens, but also if you look at the ripple effects for other emerging economies and the rest of the world?
Well, as some economists like to point out, the dollar is the global reserve currency. So the U.S. is almost compelled to run trade deficits with every country it trades with. Now, this creates a perpetual demand for U.S. debt. Second, American political gridlock prevents an honest assessment of the budget. And third, crises that are cyclical in nature, for example, the global financial crisis in 2008. And
it's a honest assessment. So what does that mean? Esau Esau is what? He is the human counterpart of Satan, and in that regard and in that term, what did Yahweh Shai say? Ye are of your father the devil, ye are lies and things of this nature. So ye are lies and the former of it, or whatever the case might be. Basically, this is all Esau know how to do, is tell lies. Okay, so he says you can't even get an honest assessment of what the real deal is when you're dealing with this man in the scenarios. You can't even get a real honest assessment of what's going on because all he knows how to do is tell lies.
That associated with the failed COVID response policies in 2020 and 2021 have certainly made the debt problem a lot worse, as my colleague in LA has noted. Now, the more than $5 trillion in federal stimulus is associated with the COVID fiscal policies certainly accelerated matters, as has America's imperial addiction to military.
$5 trillion. Okay, what was that? The money giveaway, the social programs, the PPLs, this, that, and other. You had, you got all these fucking Hellcats and everything was being bought in the so-called Israelite communities, whether it be the black or Latinos or whatever the case might be. You had all that. You had these guys taking their trips and whatnot. I'm at the airport and I was watching all kinds of people. I mean, it wasn't just old boy scraping together a little money to take his girl down to Jamaica. He was taking grandma and everybody else. And this, that, and other. They were blowing that PPL money. And this, that, and the other. That was part of that bomb. That was part of that solution, trying to prop up the dollar by making it circulate more in the economy. But the reason it was circulating more, they had more dollars to give like that, was because of the fact that the other countries, once they started cutting them deals and whatnot, and saying they go use their own currencies and back it by their own golds and whatnot, then guess what? The American dollar wasn't sought after like that. So since it wasn't sought of it and they had that much in circulation, they had to get rid of it somehow. So they started just giving the money away to the people here in America and whatnot, in the PPL loans and all kinds of other shit. But now let's let this keep going.
spending. Now, interestingly, many Republicans blame Democrats and spending on social programs, but in fact, many Republicans pander to older voters and don't touch the social spending that disproportionately benefits.
See, and again, they want to call it social programs and things to this nature, but let's go back and read it again. Let me get this. Let's go and get this again. Let's go and get this again. Let's go and get this Jeremiah again. 51:8-9. That's that Balm. See, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her and take Balm for pain. Okay, so this is the social program. But that wasn't the social program. This was the Balm that was told here that was going to be used. Babylon. Okay, Babylon, that's America now. And what is they trying to do? They trying to spread this money out among the citizens to help prop the dollar up, because nobody has to go get it to get resources anymore from other countries. Okay, what did the guy say? They loaned their resources out, to the American government and whatnot because they needed them dollars. There it is. Okay. So let's let it go some more. I'm gonna go back to it and let it go some more.
Pander to older voters and don't touch the social spending that disproportionately benefits them. And while they like to pejoratively describe Democrats as tax and spend, in fact, the Republicans have contributed more to the debt problem, as we saw, especially during the Reagan, George W. Bush, and Trump administrations, in so much as they spent with few limitations, but always looked for opportunities to cut revenues. Now, in fact, when we see these types of irresponsible fiscal and monetary policies with the monetary side, in 2020 and 2021 alone, we saw the Fed increase the money supply by 27%. This creates, or it effectively exports America's financial pain onto the rest of the world, in so much as the dollar does play such a significant role in the global financial system.
Yeah, we saw efforts by many countries, China and Brazil, to have this de-dollarizing or de-dollarized world, but it is a process in the making, and many argue that
what they say, Brazil and China, like I said, them BRIC nations. Those are two of those 5 BRIC nations that I was talking about, being what they are. Okay, so they de-dollarized it by saying that we're going to do oil exchanges and things of this nature, okay, and don't have to we don't have to go through America to get this oil money and this, that, and the other. Now we'll do it do it among ourselves.
It'll be a very, very long process. Michael in Beijing, let me turn to you. Last January, or did the
in so much as the dollar does play such a significant role in the global financial system.
Yeah, we saw efforts by many countries, China and Brazil, to have this de-dollarizing or de-dollarized world, but it is a process in the making, and many argue that it'll be a very, very long process. Michael in Beijing.
This is how you know that these people don't know the Lord, because he says he'll believe and say it's a long process, but the scriptures don't say that. Let me get a scripture for you and give you that. Okay, this is Sirach 11:21. Let me see. Put a little color on it so you can see it. Okay, so Sirach 11:21 says, "Marvel not at the works of sinners." but trust in Yahweh and abide in thy labor. So us that's in this truth, the men that's doing the work, and the elect that's trying to have their lifestyle line up accordingly, understand the name of Yahweh, Yahweh Shai, and the things that they're supposed to be doing on that level as well. It says, abide in thy labor, for it is an easy thing in the sight of Yahweh or the sudden to make a poor man rich, which is going to be the Israelites, and a rich man poor, which is going to be the top banking families of the Edomites and the rest of the world. It's an easy thing. He said he's going to destroy, he's going to bring this whole man's power structure down in less than an hour. Okay? And you see him tearing down these words that we put out here now. This is tearing down his system. The words themselves. We put it out there. The angels take that vibe that we put out there with these words and run it to the four corners of the earth. And he said his word is not going to come back void. So in the process, they going through it and they see it's falling apart. And your six pack and your basic millionaires, barely millionaires, are falling into the quagmire with the rest of the people now. Okay, so let's go back and let it play. Oops, excuse me. Go back.
That it will be a very, very long process. Michael in Beijing, let me turn to you. Last January, Indiana Republican Senator Michael Braun wrote on Twitter that America has runaway debt that will cripple the U.S. for generations, and nobody in Washington seems to care. Is there some truth to that statement?
I think there certainly is some truth to it. Keeping in mind that the U.S. government inevitably will run deficits, and I think there's general agreement among economists that that's the right thing to do. What we're seeing now is deficits that are out of control, a debt that is growing very rapidly. This has been decades in the making, as my colleague pointed out. I think that the comments of that particular senator...
He thinks this is decades in the making. This goes all the way back to Daniel. What is he talking about, decades? Let's go get this scripture real quick and let me look up some words in the process. He thinks this goes back decades. No, the Lord did this from the beginning. What is he talking about? He said before anything happened, he thought it all through. Let's go back here and look this up. Jeremiah. Let's go back to Daniel. What is he talking about? See, that's what I said. That's what we say when we mean that these scriptures are jumping off the page and this type of thing. He want to try to say something like that, not having a clue. Let's go to Daniel. What we got? Daniel 2. And let's see what we got. Yeah, 2 and 41. Daniel 2 and verse 41. Decades in the making. Okay. See, and as you can see on my thing, it says Rome. The Medo-Persian Greece was 39, and now in verse 40 it says, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdue all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. Okay, and we keep telling y'all all the time that this is the second coming of the Roman Empire. Just look at the government. Just look at the government buildings and how they are built, the columns and things that they use here in America, and how Rome was built, and the columns and things that they use in their building as well. So this is Rome 2.0. But now, and 41, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, which is the military, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with the miry clay, and the miry clay is the weak dollar. Is the weak dollar. That's that Balm that I was telling you about again. You want me to prove it? Let's go over here. Let me see. Interlineal, miry, shall be but the strength of the iron that shall mixed with clay. Let's see what we looking up. What we looking up here? Give me 1 second. Let's see what I'm looking up here. Yeah, let's pull this up. Perhaps interchange for word corresponding. Perhaps for corresponding. No. Let's see. Let's see. No. 16. The etymology of 216. Let me make sure that I got this. Let me go back one time and make sure I got it right. Okay. Okay, so it's the root word etymology. Let's see what we got. See if I can get this same.
Strong's H2916. Teat. Teat.
From an unused root meaning apparently to be sticky, wrath, per a demon. Okay, through the idea of dirt to be swept away. See, this government, like all the governments, could be swept away. What it says: mud, clay, mire, dirt. Damp, dirt, mire. Let's go further down. Teat, from the unused root. Strong's definition: unused root meaning apparent to be sticky, rather perhaps demonstrative, from though the idea of dirt to be swept away, mud or clay figuratively, calamity, dirt, mire. Let's go a little further to see, okay? Dirt or mire, okay? Let's look at, let's go a little further in with it. Let's see. Have to review the entire. No. There was one that went to Hebrews 28 and 94, but it said demon, okay? But yeah, so see, this was going to be a demon mixed into the a lion demon. Who is the lion demon that showed up? I'm gonna go back to this, and I'm gonna show you who that is in the process, because this man was thinking that his thing is going to continue forever, when it's not. So let's go back and let this play a little bit, and let me let them say it. Then I'll pull it up.
Of that particular senator resonate with things that we've heard in history. I think that often people will trace the current pattern of spending and not covering it with taxes back to the Reagan era, when President Reagan wanted to lower taxes, but the Democratic Congress didn't want to cut spending. So President Reagan just went ahead and allowed the deficit to increase by keeping taxes low and continuing to spend. This pattern then created some concern. There was a period when there was a tremendous amount of concern in the United States just before the Clinton administration, and during the Clinton administration, there was bipartisan effort to get the deficit and the debt under control. That worked for a period of time, but then with the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, and followed by COVID more recently, I would say that both the administrations and the Congress do not find this a great concern.
Yeah, well, in the meanwhile, the United States technically hit its 31 trillion debt ceiling in January, and the Treasury was forced to use quote-unquote extraordinary measures. So, William Lee, let me turn to you. How do you envision these extraordinary measures to play out? I mean, with the United States having a license to print, if you will, due to the dominance of the US dollar in the global marketplace, does the debt ceiling actually matter? I mean, it could just go on and on, right?
The debt ceiling matters.
Sorry, Michael, if you hold on for a second.
The debt ceiling actually
William.
does.
I'm sorry.
No worries,
The
Michael.
debt ceiling matters because it absolutely limits the U.S. government from issuing more debt. And the only way the government pays off debt is by rolling over that. Is when debt matures, it issues new debt to pay the old debt. And one of the things that the Treasury has been trying to do has been to prioritize its spending and to try to pay the bills that have to be paid and put off paying the bills that can be put off. But one of the things to keep in mind is that the United States right now is running deficits because the social spending, or what we call mandatory spending, the entitlements that are mandated by law, are growing much faster than revenues. And that really is the source. It's not the military spending. It's a discretionary budget deficit has actually been coming down over the years. And as a share of GDP has been very stable. What has not been stable has been the growing social entitlements. And that is something that the Congress is not willing to put a foot down and say we need to pay for entitlements with taxes. And as a consequence, the issue is more and more debt. And right now, I think the world is growing impatient with the rising debt ceiling. Now, keep in mind, the debt ceiling is a nominal number. It's $30-something trillion. And every year with inflation, that number gets bigger and bigger. The United States and Denmark are the only two countries in the world that have such a nominal ceiling. Most countries express a debt ceiling, if they have one, as a share of GDP. The European Union, for example, says that all countries have to stay within 60% of GDP in terms of their debt to GDP ratio. And their deficits have to be staying within
the European Union. There you go. Like I said, Obadiah, the men that was in confederacy with thee have deceived thee. Okay, you saying one thing, but they still trying to play along with whatever program you think you putting on the table, even though it's all part of the program that Yahweh Shai's got going and whatnot. But these elite banking families with the Rothschilds, the Oppenheimers, the DuPonts, the Gettys, the Bilderbergs, and the Rockefellers think that they actually got the control of it, when in actuality they being puppeteered by the ultimate puppet master, Yahweh himself.
3% of GDP. Now, some countries violate that and they have to deal with it, but that's a much easier number to deal with than an absolute hard stop that we have in the United States. So this is an artificial problem, but it has to be addressed. It cannot be ignored and put off.
Yeah, pointing out the distinction between the mandatory spending and the discretionary spending, both taking up the chunk of the deficit. Michael, what do you think? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that this particular crisis, with regard to raising the debt ceiling, it's something that the Congress has to deal with on an annual basis. It is more political theater than anything else. But of course, it makes investors, markets, businesses, everyone very nervous, because it's an opportunity for Congress and the president to engage in brinksmanship and to try to gain political favor with the electorate from that. At the end of the day, the United States will pay its bills. There's no question about that. It's constitutionally mandated. The question is, how do we get from here to there? What pattern or sequence of events are we going to take, and which political party is going to be able to benefit the most from its posturing and gamesmanship during this period?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of...
I'd like to add something.
Yeah, Joseph, go ahead.
I'd like to add something to your question on extraordinary measures, which are a lot more difficult now that the Fed has grossly inverted the yield curve. Now, previously, the Fed balance sheet spit out earnings that were in excess of its obligations because the balance sheet had assets that had a higher coupon rate than the reverse repo the Fed had promised the banks. those earnings accrued to the Treasury general account, giving basically Yellen a slush fund to spend on goods and services. However, now that Powell has so rapidly increased rates, the Fed balance sheet spits out earnings at a rate that is much lower than its obligations, meaning that the Treasury general account is no longer automatically filled. It bleeds money out, and that makes all of this much more difficult.
Right. To deal with the mounting debt issue, House Republicans passed legislation in April to raise the debt limit for one more year in exchange for deep spending cuts and a recent climate legislation rollback. President Joe Biden, of course, blasted this bill, saying that for over 200 years, America has never, ever, ever failed to pay its debts. So Joseph, let me stay with you. I'd like to get your take on this too. Should the debt ceiling be raised or not, and why?
Well, the debt ceiling has to be raised. Otherwise, the cost will be unbearable, particularly given an economy and banking system already experiencing considerable stress, including the sort of indicators that generally precede a significant recession. Now, from a political perspective, there are two key points here. First, historically, Republicans have sometimes played chicken with the debt ceiling, but this has always corresponded with a drop in their approval ratings. Now, this trend is clear enough that few really want to test it again, even for temporary political theater. Second, if they fail to raise the ceiling and the U.S. tips into a recession, which is a significant possibility anyway, then Democrats will blame Republicans for tanking the economy over this issue. And the possibility of a recession and being able to blame Biden is really the best opportunity that Republicans have for winning the presidency and taking full control of the legislative branch in the next election. So I suspect that they'll play with this a bit, but eventually they'll punt.
You're talking about the optics and the political theater. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has been urging Joe Biden to step up to the negotiating table. Let's take a listen.
He's putting the American economy in jeopardy by his lack of action. Now he should sit down and negotiate. We passed this early. We are in April, way ahead of the debt limit. We are the only party to take fiscal action in a sound mind that would lift the debt limit so we wouldn't have economic damage.
Now, in response to Janet Yellen's new deadline, Joe Biden called the top 4 leaders in Congress for a meeting on Tuesday, U.S. time. All the 4 leaders, bipartisan congressional leaders there. William Lee, what will be the major divergences to deal with? Do you expect any consensus?
Well, they're going to have to start talking for the first time now because they are reaching too close to the limits where the Secretary Yellen can no longer play games and pay bills and try to stage things. But one thing to keep in mind, both parties, when they were in majority position, could have eliminated the debt ceiling problem. That is, just get rid of the debt ceiling legislation requirement. But no party wanted to do that because they knew that if they ever became the minority party, it's the only way to get the majority party to negotiate. And right now, the Republicans are trying to negotiate caps on social spending and caps on the deficit in a way that would allow the debt to GDP ratio, that is the growth of debt, to be more manageable and sustainable. When the Democrats were a minority party, they also did the same thing, to use the debt ceiling as hostage to get their positions out on the table. So we know that negotiating will take place, but right now the sides are so far apart, the markets in the world are now concerned that they may actually pass the deadline and not raise the debt ceiling because both parties are so entrenched in their positions. And this is a political game of chicken that is going to have real serious consequences for global investors.
Well, William, earlier you mentioned the fact that mandatory spending entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, taking up the chunk of the deficits and therefore the debts. Is there a way out? I mean, would there be a revolt of sort if either party takes that out from the American public, especially those who depend upon the entitlements programs?
And one way out that the Congressional Budget Office has suggested, in fact, they suggested a whole list of ways to solve the problem. But unfortunately, it involves putting caps on the amount of social spending, or it involves entitlement tests. That is, do you have sufficiently high income that we can cut back on the amount of entitlements that you're getting, either through Medicaid or Medicare or even Social Security? That's a very hard political problem to touch. But the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan or bipartisan institution in Washington, has come up with a lot of analyses on how to deal with the problem. Unfortunately, the politics don't allow these economic solutions to be put on the table in a serious way.
We've seen this before. It's politics that's getting the better of the economics and economic decision making. Michael, among the 4 leaders in the Congress, Senator Chuck Schumer also urged to lift the limit with no strings attached, and signed a letter, in fact, in supporting quote unquote spending cuts and structural budget reform regarding the U.S. possible default. Here's what he wanted. Let's take a listen.
Default would mean that checks would stop from Social Security, from the military, and to much more. Anything less than a clean package is irresponsible, but it's also dangerous. Dangerous to the millions of seniors who depend on these checks for their rent, their food, their mortgage, etc.
Michael, what do you make of this?
Well, again, I think that's Senator Schumer indicating, staking out his position. He would like to see the Congress raise the debt limit without any strings attached. Essentially, what we're watching, again, is a negotiation and an attempt by both parties to try to win the hearts and minds of the public, to indicate that they are the ones who are negotiating in good faith. But I think we should keep in mind that there is no objective standard for negotiating in good faith. At the end of the day, it's going to be a question of what are the negative ramification and
no negotiation in good faith. Again, the father of lies. This Edomite, you can't enter into an agreement with him because he doesn't know how to keep it. Isn't that what we brought out years and years and years for how they entered into treaties with the so-called natives, Gad and Reuben, only to have 400 treaties in place and break all of them?
Ramifications and who gets the blame for them. So I think it's already been mentioned that in the past, Republicans have lost ground by playing this kind of brinksmanship. And certainly there's tremendous fear that people's paychecks will stop and so forth. But if the economy were to go into default and the financial markets were rattled and there was a global-wide recession as a result, I think that people would probably look beyond Congress and at the leadership of the president. So there are dangers here for President Biden as well.
Well, at the end of the day, it's all about people, in the marketplace. Let's take a listen to what average American citizens have to say about the spending cuts and this game of chicken, if you will, on the debt limit. Take a listen.
And I'm going to end that about right there, like I said, because, this has been going on now for all this time. Like I said, it was backed by gold. The American dollar was backed by gold, backed by silver. Then all that was negotiated out during Henry Kissinger. And this, that, and other, which was the 60s and the 70s. That's why I said pay attention to the 70s and this, that, and other, because Henry Kissinger and the OPEC oil treaties and things that he negotiated propped up the dollar. But now that the Middle East has pulled, the Saudi especially has pulled the plug on that and whatnot, they have nothing else to prop up the dollar. So this is why the dollar is going to do what it's going to do. And this is the miry clay. So like I said, and it's not by coincidence that Henry Kissinger was on scene at the same time that Abba Bivens was on scene, during the 60s and the 70s because of that. Like I said, you had both on the scene, good and evil. Abba Bivens brought the truth, and Henry Kissinger brought the lies to the people and made them think that they could actually pull it off. Okay? Well, not like I said, if it's not backed by gold or silver, the scripture tells you that real wealth is gold and silver. Cattle, things of this nature. goods. It's something tangible that can be used and traded with. And America doesn't have that now backing the dollar. And so, as they say, we could print more money, but now they print something that's worthless because it's not backed by anything. What is the American dollar actually backed by now? It isn't oil, it isn't the resources of other nations, and it isn't gold, and it isn't silver. Like I said, John F. Kennedy said he was against secret societies, and they smoked him in Dallas for saying that. So, like I said, these prophecies are jumping off the page right now, and all you gotta do is just pay attention. So, I hope that's edifying. Geopolitics and the Bible going hand in hand. I want to send all praises, honor, and glory out to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakodash, to the apostles and elders of GMS out of New York. I want to send double honors to elder bishops again out of Connecticut, and the apostles down in Texas because they do real well. Like I said, here's a quote: Maya Angelou Rothschild, I care not who controls a nation political affairs, so long as I control her currency. And like I said, the IMF, the Federal Reserve, these are all things controlled by the Rothschild banking family. So he don't care all this political posturing that you see going on. He cares for none of that. Why? Because they still call the Rothschild family and elite banking families are still calling the shots behind the scenes, thinking that they're going to have their way. When the Lord says that when you go to sit down and think you fill your belly, that's when He's going to basically take your ass out. So for the elect, remember that. You're going to see all this shit fall apart. But you remember that the Lord said it had to happen for us to get to the kingdom. So with that, I want to send a hearty shalom to the elect, the hopeful elect, and a barber ball to the rest of the world.